Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
So we've reached Mother's Day of 2020. And Blessed Mother's Day to all mothers today, including all presbyteras. That means matishkus, panimatres, dobrodrugas. And especially ours, panimate carrot. Today is also known as the Sunday of the Paralytic. And it's always in Paschal Tide, in Easter Tide, 40 days after Easter. It falls on the Sunday after the Myrrh-bearing women, the Sunday of the Myrrh-bearing women. And so I want to go back in, and I'm not sure if you can see this, but here's the icon of this particular paralytic. So Jesus healed many paralytics, meaning paralyzed people, in his ministry. But this one in particular was worthy of note, and we'll look at it why. So one of the reasons is the relation of resurrection. That resurrection is rising from what we are. And that we have the resurrection from the dead, but in our life, Christ gives us also little resurrections through there. And sometimes big resurrections, just not as big as the resurrection of the dead and the life of the age to come. But it's to remind us that that is the ultimate purpose for which Christ has communed with us, has taken us as his disciples. So this man, it says, has an infirmity 38 years. And they went into the pool of Bethesda, so towards the water. So the water had healing properties, right? The first person you put down, then when the water was stirred up by the angel, then there was healing in it. And so Jesus said, rise, take up your bed, and walk. And this was amazing because the paralyzed man said, I have nobody to put me in the pool when the water it gets stirred up. And Jesus skipped that part. He said, rise, take up your bed, and walk. Rise. I'm resurrecting you right now. And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed, and walked. And that day was the Sabbath, and so that's what we have in this icon. He's taking up his bed and walking. And so, more dramatic than the other paralyzed people, some of the other paralyzed people. So why is that? Why would the man take up his bed and walk? Well, there's many reasons, but we get a clue of it towards the end of the gospel reading. And that's when, afterward, Jesus found the man in the temple and said, see, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon you. So when Jesus says these things, like he said to the harlot, right, for example, who here still condemns you? Neither do I condemn you. Now go and sin no more. He was telling them to leave a sinful life, to not return to a sinful life that they had led. In her case, it was prostitution. In his case, we don't know exactly what it was, but that part of the thing means that he was likely paralyzed, doing something, living a lifestyle he shouldn't have been living. And who knows what it was, you know? It could have been that he was paralyzed by, that he was a thief and he was paralyzed when he got caught. You know, someone perhaps beat him down or something else, or maybe he was even worse, a hitman, a murderer. We don't know. But whatever he was, whatever he did, it wasn't good, and he got paralyzed from at some point from doing it. it seems to indicate. So Jesus said, 38 years, I'm lifting this from you. And not only am I lifting this from you, I'm lifting you up. But do not return to the sinful lifestyle lest the worst thing come upon you. And I feel like this gospel is so pertinent to our world right now. The whole world became paralyzed over the past several months. The whole world. I still can't get shipments from overseas for church goods that were ordered months and months and months ago. The whole world has become the paralytic of this story. And like the paralytic of this story, we are not so innocent a victim in this paralysis. And which is why that this paralyzed person in the gospel reading for today is so applicable to mankind right now. We stopped making things for ourselves and outsourced them to increase profit margins. Our pet food and even human food then had toxic elements for years now in it. Oh well, we saved a buck. We didn't care that the reason why it became cheaper to ship things all the way overseas and then all the way back is because all the things were made in sweatshops overseen ultimately by countries, and one in particular, that enslaves its people under an atheist totalitarian regime and has repeated murderous onslaughts against its own people. You know, there's one thing that the Bible makes clear, and again, the book of Revelation makes this very clear. Also, that tolerating sin will be held against us. Sitting by idly and silently approving of bad things for our own benefit. It's not acceptable to God. Did anyone really think that this was acceptable to God? Or did we just not care enough to ask the question? We didn't care that everyone else would become slaves to them because, we no longer produced our own medicines or even food, and even funded the research labs in which several viruses have escaped and threatened the world. Well, the scripture said he is not willing to work, should not eat. And so we stopped producing things for ourselves. As a culture, we're violating that, right? We're shipping it off and looking for profits and investing in companies that were smart enough to do that. And buying those same products, we made ourselves dependent on the wrong things. And there's nothing wrong with medicine and science except for when you set God aside and make medicine and science a new God and put our trust in them. And by the way, whether in Wuhan it was accidentally released or not is irrelevant. That we supported a system in which experimentations that should have never happened did happen. God put us here as stewards of creation to be its boss. But as its caretaker, not as its consumer and waster. We will be held accountable, and we're naturally held accountable even before the end times. It's built into the system. By the way, along with it, we were going down a road of perpetual hedonism and self-satisfaction. And as part of that, we were accepting and celebrating the mutilation of the body just recently, over the past year or two, in this transgender movement. And for the first time in history, this past year, not only was abortion being upheld as a necessary evil, but it was being publicly celebrated. And we thought that none of this would have repercussions. And I'm not even talking about God putting a whammy on us. These things have natural repercussions built in to the good creation that God created, because evil is a corruption of God's good order. If a mosquito bites me on my hand and I can't stand the itching anymore, and to resolve this problem, I chop off my hand, there are natural repercussions. because it was a bad remedy for the problem. Ointment would have been much better than cutting off my hand. And I got to tell you, we are constantly cutting off limbs for bug bites in our culture. And this has become not only normal, but celebrated. If I put Dr. Frankenstein in charge of my latest medical research and development project, I should not be surprised when something goes wrong. Therefore, let us take care. Once this is all said and done, once Christ raises us up, gets rid of this thing, and resurrects us, gives us this resurrection before the resurrection, God willing, not to return back to any culturally sinful lifestyles, not to passively accept them, not to return to them, lest the worst thing come upon us, as Christ said. Instead, let us joyfully not only rise from the bed that Christ has given us. Sorry, I still have the camera down here. But take up our bed and walk. To show everyone and to tell everyone, it was Jesus who did this. It was Jesus who did this. When the Lord gets rid of this thing, let us take up our beds and be witnesses to the Lord who delivers us, and let other people know that it was in fact the Lord, and that He can deliver them from other things. He can raise them up from other beds of sicknesses and paralysis that they're living in right now. God bless you and keep you all. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.